Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode on the MR2. But today we really need to talk about this paint job. Okay, so as you know, over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks ago, I had spent a lot of time and effort getting this car sanded down, prepped up and painted. However, unfortunately, it's not quite gone to plan, where some of the paint hasn't fully cured, or to be honest, most of the paint hasn't fully cured. Now, I think there's two reasons for this. One, even though I had 3-4 heaters on the go in here, it was still really cold when we tried to do it, and the ambient temperature in here probably wasn't enough. Second of all, especially something on the boot where I did have a lot of issues when I was painting it, I may have tried to overcompensate and put too much on too quickly. So unfortunately, this boot is going to have to be repainted, which, although extremely infuriating because after all that hard work, I'm not going to get the major bodywork of this car completed anytime soon. I still need to paint things like the side pods, the spoiler, and the rear screen surround and bits and pieces like that. So redoing the boot won't be the end of the world, but obviously it's just more work that I really didn't want to have to do. So over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I've been coming up here to try and correct the few bits and pieces and see where I can actually sand and polish up the paintwork and where I probably can't. So the boot, for example, I just cannot do anything else with it. I've tried to sand it down as much as I can to then polish it up, but it kept giving me this hazy, streaky finish where, because it's so soft and then I'm polishing it, it was just marring the paint. And unfortunately, where I've now sanded down to try and correct it, or keep sanding it down to try and correct it, I've ended up going through or back through to the metal and to the primer in a few different spots on this boot. So that is definitely going to have to come off and get repainted. However, it does appear that some of the car, most of the car, I can actually get it sanded and get it polished. So I concentrated on this rear quarter to begin with, and I actually managed to get a really nice finish, which is why I didn't know anything about the curing problem, because I literally started on this and I managed to get that pretty spot on straight away. So when I moved on to the boot, that was when I realised, hang on a minute, this hasn't cured properly. So what I've done today so far is I've concentrated on that side rear quarter, and I've actually managed to get that spot on. I'll take you over there and have a look now. Okay, so I started on this quarter originally, and I managed to get a really nice finish. I've actually started to go over it again with some 2000 grit, just because there was some larger scratches and I wanted to make sure they weren't too deep and that they were fine. But as you can see, really nice, smooth. I mean, as you can see by the reflection, it's really come out well. So I did all that and I was really happy, and then I moved on to the boot, and this is where the problems began, because I was literally able to put my thumb in the paint and it would leave a thumbprint mark. Now obviously some of it might just be dust, but you can just about see, the camera's not going to concentrate on that properly, there is a slight indent from my thumbprint. You can just about see the wrinkles around there. So that's how I knew straight away that something was wrong. Now obviously you do want it slightly soft, so that when you come to correct it or flatten it down and polish it up, you're not fighting against a real rock hard surface. However, that is too soft. Every time I was polishing it up, it was then marring the paint and leaving this really weird, hazy, horrible finish. So today I have literally done this entire rear quarter panel, and it's come out really, really nicely. There's still a few imperfections, like up here where I've sanded and haven't managed to get it with my DA yet, but I just wanted to make sure that this would actually polish up, flatten back and polish up nicely, which this has, and I'm super happy. And I'm hoping that the rest of the actual car's bodywork is going to come out like this. I don't care about the doors, the boot and bits and pieces like that, because I can just take them off and repaint them. But something like the rear quarter, for example, that you can't just take off and redo. You'd have to mask up and you'd have to try and blend it in with the original paint, and it just wouldn't go very well with me trying to attempt it. So on this door, for example, I haven't touched this yet. You can just see there, look, a big run and a few little ones here. Now I'm hoping that I'll be able to correct that, flatten that back, and then polish it up and it will come up fine. but I have a funny feeling that I might end up starting going through that one as well. So it might be a case of both doors off and the boot off and repaint them when I paint the rest of the bits and pieces, like the side pods and the spoiler and the window surround. So like I say, I'm not too fussed if I do have to take the doors off and the boot off to correct them, to make it absolutely spot on, because I want to try and get this as good a finish as I possibly can. Now, the rest of the car, the front end especially, seems fine. If I press the paint, it doesn't even leave a thumbprint mark. So I'm hoping that the rest of the car is going to be spot on, and it was just the boot. And I do think it was probably because I was trying to overcompensate on the boot, because I was getting a lot of issues with the paint, and I was probably laying on too thick, too quick. So, as I've just now shown you now, I did actually buy a few bits and pieces ready for this once it was flattened back and polished up. So I bought these lovely front indicators, smoked clear, really nice. I also broke the Toblerone front markers that you get on these Japanese imports, but I've got the same corresponding black clear versions of that as well. So these are going to look really smart as well, I think. Other side really, but yeah, you get the gist. I think that's going to look really nice. And what I also done was bought a hub for the inside, because I couldn't stand the Rev 1 steering wheel, and I had one of these just laying around. So for now, that's sat on there like that. Same with the Rev 1 gear knob. It's absolutely hideous. So I've bought a, well, I'm pretty sure it's a replica, but it's a TRD knob. I just really want to get this car on the road. So like I say, today, for the rest of the day, I'm now going to try and polish up the rest of the car, as much of the car as I can. So then that way we know where we stand. So when I come to paint things like this, I'll know what I need to paint as well. Like I say, I'm hoping it's just going to be the odd body panel here and there, like the two front doors and the boot, because that way I can get the rest of the car looking absolutely spot on, and then just paint all those final bits and pieces, and then I can just bolt it all together, and then the bodywork's done. So stop procrastinating, Jason, and just crack on. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just starting off with the 800 grit sandpaper. That way it's going to really dig in and get rid of all the little bit imperfections, so any of those droplet marks, any of the orange peel, any runs. Once I have made sure that that is completely smooth, I can then start to go over it with the 2000 grit sandpaper. Then we can then tackle it with the dual action polisher. So as I say, I'm just literally going over the 800 now. As you can see, it's already starting to have that really nice hazy finish, which now we'll see the whole of that top panel is super smooth. All the orange peel is gone. So that is now an absolutely smooth base for me to go on with some 2000 grit. I'm just pointing out some issues there, which I'd probably have to concentrate on a little bit more with the 800. But now we're going to start to tackle it with the 2000 grit. Get rid of all those 800 grit sandpaper marks and just smooth it off even more, because the dual action polisher will able to take off the 2000 grit sandpaper marks, but something deeper like the 800 grit that I've used beforehand, it won't touch. So you'll still be left with like loads of scratches and loads of swirl marks and stuff. So using that 2000 grit is definitely needed before we polish it. So as you can see, this is now me with it down to 2000 grit sandpaper. Really smooth, really nice finish. So hopefully now we'll go over it with the dual action polisher now, and it should come up nice and glossy and give us that glass-like finish. So like I say, I'm just now going over it with some polish and some heavy cut compound, and then I'll finish it off with the Meguiar's paste on top, make it really shiny, and hopefully this panel is done. However, unfortunately, I am going to have to repaint this panel because I do end up going through the paint with some 800 grit sandpaper. So unfortunately, this door will have to be done as well. Okay, so obviously this is just the start of things to come on the bodywork. That was just a small section of it. I'm now going to have to try and do that over the entire car and get all the paintwork sorted. But I'm over the moon to know that it's just the boot that was the issue of the curing and it wasn't the whole car. Obviously it makes sense because I did have issues laying the paint down on the boot, so I was laying it down too thick and I was probably doing it too quick in between coats, so my bad. But do you know what, you live and learn. I am going to have to repaint the doors as well because I've started to rub through on them, but at least it's just them that I'm going to have to do. Obviously I'm not too upset because I've still got the other bits and pieces I need to paint anyway, so all of the side pods, the spoiler, all those bits and pieces need to get painted anyway. So if I'm now going to be doing the boot and the two doors as well, that's not too bad. But I am over the moon with the finish of this rear quarter and also the other side as well. So near enough that entire side is actually flatted and polished. Obviously, like I say, the door I'm gonna have to redo anyway, so that's a little bit of a shame, but like I say, next weekend I'm hoping I'll have all weekend just to crack on and get all of that prepped up, get this all flatted and polished up, and then obviously we can start prepping the spoiler and everything so we can get all them painted at the same time as well. So thank you very much for watching and join me in the next one.